It is 6:01, January 8th. Call the meeting to order and declare a quorum of 7 members present. Dr. Eagley.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. First up this evening, we have a couple of gentlemen who are joining us from Thompson and Horton Group to talk about a little bit of the work that they do to help school boards in the selection of superintendents. And so I would like to call up to the lectern Dr. Mike Moses and Mr. David Thompson from Thompson and Horton to talk a little bit, share a little bit about what they do here for school districts. Absolutely. So you can be on camera, and it is the microphone's already ready to go for you. Yes, sir.
Make sure we can make good contact.
Absolutely. We might not be able to see you past that. So,
well, good evening, members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to come and spend a little bit of time with you this evening. I'm David Thompson. I'll let Dr. Moses introduce himself in a moment. That's going to be hard for me, so I can't move around. Got to stay in one place. But first of all, we want to say Happy New Year and congratulations to the board, the superintendent, the staff for the great work that you're accomplishing here in College Station. Mike and I watch districts very closely around the state, and we appreciate the great work y'all are doing here. We want to say congratulations to Clark on the move. We know that's a good opportunity for you professionally, but it also presents an opportunity for the board to go through the process of selecting your next leader. Our law firm, Thompson and Horton, we represent school districts, colleges, primarily educational entities all over Texas. Dr. Moses and I, a number of years ago, when he left as Commissioner of Education, Mike and I have been longtime friends for many years, begin to work together to assist a select group of districts a year with superintendent searches. And our focus over the years has been primarily with larger districts of your size and larger. We typically work or assist 4 to 6 boards a year in the process. And it's just something Mike and I do together because we enjoy working together on this, and we believe leadership matters. And we have about 1,021 school districts in Texas. Mike, I think half the kids in Texas, we have between 5.3 and 5.4 million children. Half of the kids are in the largest 60 districts, and you're one of those. So leadership in these communities not only matters for your community, but it matters for the state as a whole. And so Mike and I have been honored to work with a number of districts over the years. We're on a tour between the two of us to eat at every Whataburger in Texas, and we've been checking them off over the years. Tonight, and I want to make sure and say this up front, members, because I know your media is present. We're not here on your ticket tonight. Our visit with you tonight is purely complimentary to share a little information with you. If we can assist you or answer some of your questions, we're happy to do that. I live in Houston. I'm on my way to Dallas for a school board meeting there tomorrow. Mike lives in Dallas. He's on his way to Houston for a meeting with the board there tomorrow. So this worked very well for us to meet in College Station, and then we were talking earlier, I should give him a key to my house in Houston, and he probably should give me a key to his house in Dallas. But we're glad to be with you tonight. We want you to ask us anything that you want to suggest about the search process. How many of you on the board have been through a search previously? Okay, we know that it's maybe a daunting experience, but our goal when we work with boards is to make it a positive, unifying experience, not only for the board, but with your whole district, with the staff and the community. We know it's a big undertaking, maybe the most important decision boards make. We can share a little information about how we approach things and some ideas. But Mike, I'd like you to say a few words, and then we do have some information that we may need to cover in public just for Open Meetings Act purposes, kind of general discussion about the process. But then, Mr. President, if it's appropriate, there are some specific conversations, particularly if we have any discussions about particular individuals that might be interested in the position at some point in time. We would recommend that we go into closed session here in a few moments to have some of those privileged conversations as authorized under the Open Meetings Act. So, Mike, I am very fortunate and honored over the years to get to work with Mike. I will tell you, he'll tell you a little bit about himself, but I will tell you he's been superintendent in multiple districts. He's been deputy chancellor at Texas Tech. He's been commissioner of education, and Texas Monthly described him as the best appointment that Governor George W. Bush ever made during his term as governor. So I'm very honored to know Mike and to work with him. And again, we just appreciate the ability to spend a little time with you this evening. Mike, you want to say some words?
Thank you, David. I want you to talk to my wife and tell her some of that when you get a chance to.
I'll remind you.
Mr. President, members of the board, thank you. As David said, we're both honored to be here. Have followed your district for many years. I've had the opportunity in the roles in the positions I've held to watch this district, and I would echo his statements and congratulate you on the work that's being done here. Congratulate Clark for his service and also for his new professional opportunity. As David said, we've been very fortunate to get to work with some of the outstanding school districts in the state. We've just been blessed in that way. I have been superintendent. My wife says, I wish you could hold a job. And in a district in East Texas, on the Gulf Coast, in Lubbock, Texas, Dallas, Texas, I was superintendent and worked in Austin as commissioner for about 5.5 years and also served some time at Texas Tech. But I've enjoyed doing this. Had the opportunity again to just work with a lot of really good districts. I have a son who's in Round Rock as a school board member there, so I'm pretty familiar about school board work from both the professional side and from the personal side, and I know that your work is important, and this task is probably the most important thing that you will do in your work as a trustee. We work with districts that do searches, do external searches, also that have internal candidates, whatever the board desires to do. We've worked with boards all over Texas in just about every way you can imagine to assist them, and we're happy to do that. We have a model that we follow, but we always tell people it's not our search, it's your search, and so we try to customize the searches. We are not a cookie cutter company or a cookie cutter search firm that just we do it to meet the needs of the school board and the school district. So anyway, we're glad to be here. We would be happy to answer any general questions that you have about searches and search processes. And then if, as David said, if we need to discuss more specific individuals or how we might approach certain individuals, then we probably need to go into executive session to do that. But very honored to be here.
Any general questions for us?
I think it might be worthwhile just to spend at a very high level a couple minutes on what would be the general process steps that a board would go through, and maybe which ones are optional and which ones are maybe required.
You want to talk? You want to?
I'm going to mention a couple that are required by law on both the front end and the back end. And then, Mike,
That's what attorneys do.
Yep, and then I'll defer to you to talk about some of the steps as a best practices that we found tend to work well with districts. There is a requirement in statute that you post the position internally for at least 10 days. So, in terms of posting, that is the only legal requirement that exists in the education code, and we will work with your staff if you want us to assist you, or your regular counsel could certainly assist you to make sure you meet that requirement. We do think there are some best practices in terms of other advertisement if the district wants to cast a wider net, and again, that's a conversation that we'll have with the board, but that's one legal requirement on the front end. And then on the back end, there is a 21-day requirement between when you name a finalist and when you can actually enter into a contract and hire a person. We describe it, it's sort of the difference between the announcement of the engagement and the marriage ceremony. So that 21-day period gives your candidate, before you've entered into any legally binding relationship, an opportunity to be in the community, to meet with members of your community, for the community to vet the person, et cetera, before the board then legally can actually move to hire the person and enter into a contract. So those are two legal requirements. If we're asked to assist a district, we assist with all stages of the legal requirements, whether it's posting or various other steps. But those are two that we would call to your attention because they do affect kind of a timeline. They help establish kind of some framework, if you will, for your timeline. And then in the way Mike and I approach it, we have developed some best practices that we have found work reasonably well for districts within those legal requirements. Mike, you want to speak to those?
The good thing about working with, I think we're maybe the only firm where you have a former superintendent and an attorney, and having someone like David, we're very, very lucky. David and I try to, first of all, if we work with the district, we don't send other people. We are it. If we're working with the district, if you see anybody, it'll be the two of us. It's not that we don't send other people for the firm. We do this ourselves. But generally, on a comprehensive search, we handle all the recruiting, the advertising. We help the board develop a timeline. We also help gather up any applications, internal or external, for the position. We bring the candidates to the board. We go over candidates with the board. Depending on how the board wants to do the search, and the timelines involved, we will bring every single person that establishes a candidacy for the position. Again, this is your search, not ours. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of what we would do. We're always asked, how can internal candidates be considered? Absolutely. We work with boards and however they choose to want to do that. We then set up the interviews, and we usually recommend the board conduct a couple of rounds of interviews, first round being a little more formal, the second round being more informal, and just to be sure that the match and the fit is a good one and it's what the board wants and believes will be good for the district. And then we assist the board in any other matters that have to be wrapped up, like contract, background checks and the financial checks. District will do a criminal background check and so forth. And then David, as I said, David is very kind about helping districts that they want the help in making sure the contract and all those issues are brought to closure. And anyway, that's kind of.
You mentioned getting some community input.
To the extent that the board wants community input and engagement, and most of the boards we work with do, we also work with the board to help identify usually somewhere around 60 or 70 stakeholders. We ask each trustee to nominate 8 to 9 people, usually a parent, a non-parent taxpayer, a business person, an elected official, a teacher, an administrator, a person that works as a pastor, but about 9 people each. That gives us about 63 people. And then David and I meet with all of those individuals in groups, in about 3 or 4 groups. We meet with them for about an hour and a half, and we take their feedback, and we have some questions, and we call it a guided conversation that we basically ask some questions and get some feedback that then we share with the board. The board does not have to participate, and we ask the board not to participate in those, but we give the board some feedback after meeting with the community members of what we heard and what we think the community is saying. And we script the conversations pretty closely, so we don't do it for attribution. But anyway, we give you some input that way in terms of And it probably won't surprise you a whole lot because you're the people who are elected by these individuals and put in trust to the school district as trustees. But sometimes it'll help you gain a little insight in what people may be thinking about the district and see as priorities or challenges. And so most of the districts we work with find that to be pretty helpful. And I think they would tell you, the ones if you talk to any of them, they would tell you, they always tell Dave and I, this was pretty valuable in letting our members of our community talk and be heard about their aspirations, goals, dreams for their kids, their school district, and so forth. So anyway, we offer that as part of the work that we do with districts as well. Did I leave anything else out?
We can also do an online questionnaire if you want to broaden community input beyond the individuals that the diverse group that Mike's already mentioned, but that's something we can discuss. Trustee McAdams, the entire process, if you did a full nuts, soup to nuts process, would typically be a 5 to 6 month, 4 to 5 month process if you did a full comprehensive search.
The timelines make you.
There are ways to expedite that, and part of that is driven by some of the timelines that I mentioned are going to be required by law in the process on both the front and back end. There are some ways to expedite that depending on whether you want to do the full comprehensive search or if we can do a more targeted, depending on some conversations with the board and Mr. President, that might be a point to transition unless there are other questions. But that's kind of a high-level overview of what a typical search process, some of the key stages that the search would involve.
So at this point, we're going to move into executive session. The board will meet in executive session to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or an employee. The executive session deliberations will be held pursuant to the personnel matters, closed meetings, exception to the Texas Open Meetings Act as set forth in Section 551.074 of the Texas Governmental Code. The following items will be discussed. Number 1, consultation with search firm regarding upcoming superintendent search process options. Number 2, determining the process for a superintendent search. And number 3, naming an interim superintendent.
Very good.
It is 8:33, and we are going to call us back into session. Are there any items or motions made from tonight's executive session?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Dr. Ely's resignation effective February 2nd.
I will second that motion.
I'd like to say just a few things before we do this. First of all, I'd like to thank a lot of people who made my time in College Station ISD possible. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Steve Johnson, who hired me way back in 2000 and made me a part of the curriculum instruction team in College Station ISD. I appreciate so much Eddie Colson and his friendship and mentorship and all throughout my time in leadership in College Station ISD, and it was a pleasure to follow him as superintendent of this great school district. I just want to thank Dr. Valerie Yokin and the first board. Mrs. McAdams was on that board who saw something in me and hired me to be superintendent in 2014. So I appreciate them seeing something in me and making that initial hire. I'd also like to thank Mr. Jeff Harris and the board from the last several years and the work that they did and that we did together to make a number of difficult decisions for this school district and a number of positive decisions for the kids in College Station ISD. And I'd also like to thank this board and Mr. Schaefer and your leadership, and thank you for working with me and everything that you've been for me and our time together. This board and this school district is poised to do even greater things, and it's under your leadership and the time that we spent last weekend and working on the vision and the direction of the school district, I know great things are in store for College Station ISD. There's never a good time to make a change, but the senior administrative team that we have with our cabinet, with Mr. Martindale, Mrs. Perry, and Dr. Trammell, our tremendous school leaders on campuses across this district, have this district ready to go on and do very, very well here in the future. So I just thank you all for this opportunity to be here, and it's bittersweet that I offer my resignation. I will miss everybody here terribly, but I'm excited for the new opportunities in Church Cibolo Universal City. So with that, thank you so much.
Mr. President, can we have a little bit of discussion?
Yes, sir, we can.
I just briefly wanted to say, as a fairly new board member, but as somebody who's lived in College Station for the last several years and a parent of a child in CSISD, we're going to miss you. Just, looking from the outside up until the last couple of months, you've been a very impressive superintendent, and we will move on, and we've got to, we're starting to develop a good plan to do that, but you'll be missed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ben.
I want to jump in for a second as well. I trust that we'll have an opportunity for a proper farewell, but just on the heels of what you've shared, I have enjoyed your leadership and watching you impact this community from a pretty, I appreciate the front row seat to watching you work. And as the father of 3 children who have either graduated or hopefully will graduate, we'll see about that third one, from CSISD, your leadership has been instrumental in that. And just as a dad, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nugent.
Guess we're going to keep going here because I agree. I agree. We'll have more times for goodbye. This isn't goodbye yet, but just again, following what you said, I also just wanted to add that I was very proud to be a part of that board in 2014 when we did make the choice to hire you, and obviously it was one of the best decisions we made for our district. You've taken us through some important times over the last 6 years, so thanks very much for that, and it also illustrates how important our decision that we're working through right now and our selection process for the next superintendent is. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. McAdams. You don't all have to say anything. But.
I know. And I know we'll have the proper farewells, but I really do want to thank you for, as I've been on the board for a year, that transition of really being there, going above and beyond for me personally. And truly respect the leadership that you've brought to this district. And I know that Church Cibolo Universal, or whatever their name is, did I say that right?
Universal City, yes, ma'am.
Universal City is gaining a great superintendent, and their board, obviously as well. And I'm sure you'll do great things over there. But I personally do want to recognize you for how you've worked with us, and for me personally, again, that ease of transition, onto the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Green. I appreciate it.
I've got to say something. You know that. Dr. Ely, I kind of rebound off of what Josh said there, but being a parent in the district, being a former alumni in the district, watching what you did with our district has been phenomenal, and we appreciate that. The last thing I want to say, you're always welcome back here, and I know you will be back here because this is the promised land. And this is where we are, and you've seen that, and we appreciate you leading us into that, and we hope to make you proud down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Horvath.
Great. All mine is so sentimental. So you've shown me that we can trust you. And that has been incredibly important for me and my role on this board, knowing that as a board member, as a parent, and I've come to you as a parent, that I could trust you with the decisions that you were making for my student, my kids, and all of the kids in this district. And you are going to be a hard act to follow, and we're going to miss you for sure. But we'll find somebody.
You'll do very well. Absolutely.
And you have prepared us. Your leadership in this district has prepared us for the next step, for change, for opportunity. But that trust that you have provided has been tremendous. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nolan. That's it.
I guess as president, I get to speak last. Clark, I'd like to say that I've known you a long time. I don't know how many people up here can say they've danced with you.
I probably need some clarification for those in the media, but
Danced in public out on the football field. But I would say that I think you did an outstanding job as superintendent. I'm going to miss that, but I think the most important part that I'm going to miss is being able to talk to you and sit next to you because, I mean, you're much more than a superintendent. You're a good friend to me.
thank you, Mr. Schaefer. I appreciate that.
So we have a motion and a second. This is the last time we can speak, but all in favor of accepting Dr. Eagley's resignation, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all.
The next item we have on the agenda for tonight is determining interim superintendent.
I would like to move that the board name Mr. Mike Martindale interim superintendent effective February 3rd, 2020, and provide a stipend for the performance of the duties as proposed in our closed session.
And I would like to second.
There's a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion as made by Mr. Nugent, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Any opposed? The motion carries 7-0. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.